The final card in the series of the major arcana is the world. This is the path of soul that we're studying, and this is the principle of creativity. And so we come to the final principle of how the soul is in its fullest creativity, where it's evolving freely, having gone through all of the mysteries that it met as challenges on this earth plane, and it realizes the goal of the world. Now, this isn't only the physical world, this is the world of your experience, all that you are as a freely evolving creative being. That's the goal, that's why we came. This is the truth. This is the truth of your being. No illusion, no games, no lies. This is the essence, who you are. And it's pure spirit, its purity is unsullied. And it's life. It isn't a part of life, it is life. There's an aspect of us which is one with the one. And we discover this through whatever journey we take. I found it useful, helpful, very inspiring to use the tarot. But I've also used the 7 life paths, and I've applied that to the tarot, as you have noticed as you've been following these teachings. I've also found Sufism to be very useful. And what I've done is patterned my understanding of my life according to the tarot. So I've seen that there are chapters of my life where I learned those lessons. So if we look at the 0 number, Fool, first of all, before I was a grown adult, I had a sense of myself as being otherworldly, not belonging to this place. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. Quite a number of my clients tell me that they still feel it. They just don't belong. This isn't ours. This isn't our right place. And I think it is our right place. It's just wrong. There's a wrongness about the earth, the world that we live in. It's made wrong by an agency that is false to it. Some alien invasion in the times before history. Going way back, this is what feels like the case to me. It just feels like this is my place and it's just been badly treated. So I incarnated knowing that there was something wrong. And when I went through a rebirthing experience later in life, I could remember my rebirth into this plane, my birth through my mother into this plane of the earth. And I remembered the feeling I had on arrival. And it was terror, I think, well, almost like, oh no, no. This is not right. And I had that strongly within me during my childhood, that I was just in the wrong place. Now, later as an adult, I realized that it was the right place. Just, it's wrong. There's something wrong with this world, and that's why we're all out of kilter with it. And as the Fool was overtaken by worldliness, I struggled against forces. And I realized I had to come up with a strategy. I realized this really early, incredibly early. I was quite philosophical. I remember this. At the age of 4, I was working out philosophy. I God knows where it came from, but I was kind of working out why my parents were the way they were and why my sister was like that. And I was thinking about that and trying to work out how to get my strategy sorted out so I wasn't further in trouble than I already was. And I ran away from home when I was 4 years old just to indicate something. Pathetic gesture. They caught me and brought me back within minutes. However, I cherish that memory. So the path of life is the first thing to deal with, and that's the first path on our studies. The path of life. What's the mystery of life? And it's represented by the three cards: the Magician, the High Priestess, and the Empress. So the Magician's job, and this is our first chapter in life, we have to find a way to deal with all the trickery and the deceit and the games and those kind of things. And you're not going to be able to do that really well unless you learn about the games. Now, you can try to hold free of trickery yourself as you do that, but you need to learn that there is trickery in the world, and you need to become skillful. Now, in my case, I became a professional. I realized that professionals, whatever they were, I had no idea what that was, but I heard the word somewhere that professionals were on top of things, so I wanted to become a professional. And they looked at me strangely in the professional guidance unit and said, well, what kind? I don't care. But do you want to be a solicitor, an architect, or accountant? I don't care. I just want to be a professional. So I was realizing very young, before I understood things, that professional was important. And so I had to be skillful. That's what it meant. I had to know my job. I had to become an expert at something, because experts win and others lose. So I kind of worked that out. And when you actually take that principle and expand it, you realize that there is a fundamental secret, that if you develop expertise in this secret, you can apply it universally. That's magic. And that relates to the elements: earth, air, fire, water. Earth, you have to be grounded. It has to work for real. You have to be able to measure your success. Water, you have to tune in to the fact that people are emotional. Most decisions are made through feelings, not logic. Air, you have to be sociable. You have to get on with people. You have to have a clear mind to do that with. You have to think things through. You have to train the mind to be both clear and social, relate to the environment in which you find yourself, and yet bring that clarity of rationality to bear upon any matter. And fire, we got to get on with it. We got to be purposeful and energetic, and it's not going to come to you. You got to go to it. So those are the four major kind of tasks that we have to master. And until you've mastered all four, you're going to be done to. People will take advantage of you unless you've got all four sorted out. I've learned that quite early. And if you do manage to get all four of them worked out, and you get that sense of being able to cope whatever the case, whatever happens, you can come up with something. And they blend together within you. And then you have the magic, the ether. And when you actually kind of ask yourself, what is magic? What does a magician do? The yin and the yang of it are these, that you yin, create an atmosphere. You are sensitive to the atmospheric conditions with your yin self. Your feeling, feminine, responsive self knows how it feels in a situation. And the yangness of it all, where you say, right, I'm having that. No, I'm having that. I've decided exactly what I want, and I'm having it. That forceful, assertive approach. If you have both of those going on in balance, then you've got magic. So that's an expression of ether. That's the first thing in the path of life. But that rather makes you forceful, and it can give you a sense of losing sight of the humanity of it all, the soft, feminine underbelly of the fact that we're all emotional beings and we feel. Yeah, we feel, and we feel it all. And it's all wrong, and we feel that. And some of us, those of us that are interested in this work, really do suffer because we feel the wrongness of it all. We feel that deceit and lying and the magician's tools are all very well and good in context, but there's something about this which is wrong. We feel that. And the High Priestess unveils the mystery to us and explains to us. It shows through its mysteries, this archetype, what's going on underneath it all. And there are so many versions of this that there's no one truth. There are versions in books and systems and conversations that are useful, but there's no essential map. There's no essence map. There's nobody who actually knows, really, what's best for you. That's your job, to work out what's best for you. So what you do is you read the mysteries. You read what was best previously for other people. They've written about their experiences and their thoughts and their explanations for how it all works. So you can read that, and if that lands well within you, you can claim it and own it and know it. And that brings a deep sense of inwardness and inner mystery to bear upon the topic. And this is the second mystery, to just know how to feel things through. Now, the depth of this mystery is peace, actually, a peaceful heart. It would equate in the Jewish tradition to the Shekhinah principle, divine light cascading through you perpetually. If you have that meditation of imagining divine light pouring through the crown into your body, in through your body to the earth, and you become a vessel through which divine light is channeled into the world, whose exaltation, whose best feeling, whose greatest service to the world is reached when you have a peaceful heart. That's wisdom. That is what wisdom is, where you can align the clarity of mind with the peacefulness of the heart. So this is a life lesson that we need to get. And we study the profound mysteries rather early on in the series of exercises through the tarot. So we're already at an advanced level of comprehension where the magician has given us mastery over things, outer things, and the high priestess, the deep mastery over one's own heart. And then we come to the empress, the creativity principle. Okay, so you're free to do anything. You've mastered the world, and you've evolved into this depth of knowingness within the heart. So what are you going to create from that? And this is the empress. Anything beautiful. And I like nature. Anything green. Doesn't matter what it is. You make up your own story. Here's the wisdom. Make up your own story in beauty, in a natural way. Now, this wisdom is going to be perceived differently by each of us. But those qualities of being in keeping with nature, one with the land, and this isn't metaphorical, know that the land is the stuff of which you're made. We're made of physical stuff, which we fed through what we put into the mouth, that grew in the soil of the earth. We've taken food from the earth, and it makes us who we are. We are of the earth, and that's deeply essential to our path of life, is to know that and to reconnect with the mother of our being, that which gave birth to us and that which nourished us and kept us alive, is physicality. And it's green. The operation of water upon the earth, which is what gives life, gives greenery. It's the mystery of the emerald. The empress principle is known in Sufism as Zamrada crystal, which is the emerald crystal. So the empress teaches us that it doesn't really matter what you create, because creativity is personal. We create it all, we make it all up in keeping with nature. That gives rise to the whole idea of the narrative. We make our own narrative. We interpret what we observe, and we make it into a story. On every single level you can imagine, not only explaining human behavior, which, well, it does need quite a lot of explaining. It doesn't seem to make sense. And it doesn't make sense because it's not driven by common sense. Common sense is just not common. Rationality is just very rare indeed. We make up our story from our feelings, and we get those feelings from our relationship to nature. How we are with our physical body is significantly an expression of how we feel. So here it is, the path of life. We have to get on top of life like the magician. We have to deepen our sensitivity to the glory of some subtle reality that comes from above and descends through us, enlivening the heart. And we have to make up our own story, create the narrative of our life, turn our perception of what's going on into something beautiful and natural. And it's lovely. The Empress energy is lovely. Now, when we can do those three things, we've mastered the path of life. Then we're in life in mastery. So then we move on to the next path. And the path of truth is next. And these names of paths and this order in which I'm studying them, this is just my narrative. It's not your truth. It might work for you. Try it out. If it works for you. Try another one. If it doesn't, it's my narrative. I see that this works for me. So I'm saying the second thing I needed to learn in life was the path of truth. And as I became older and I engaged with power possessors in life, I realized that unless I claimed that position for myself, I would be subject to someone else's power. That's the truth of it. And you might not like to be a powerful person because of all the responsibility and the limitations that are placed upon you in your mind. It's not true. But if you're not, somebody else will claim that. If you don't claim your own power, somebody will take your power from you. That's the law of the jungle, as it were, and it applies to human behavior as well. And this is the emperor energy. The path of truth begins with the freedom of an emperor. Now, an emperor is not an image of freedom, is it? It's an image of responsibility and control. And here we have the revelation, almost, of a paradox, that whereas power feels like we want it, most people want power because they don't want powerlessness in their minds, and then they behave in a powerless way in their life expression, strangely. Well, no, that's not truth. If you want power, first you've got to claim it. Now that means being in conflict with somebody else who wants the power that you're claiming. You can't get around that. Power isn't just waiting to be taken up by anyone who wants it. That's not how it works. Everyone who has power fought for it, and they fight to hold it. And that's what we have to do. We have to claim power from somebody who doesn't want us to have it. Now, that level of power is really the power of a king, but here we're talking about an emperor. So we're talking about a king of kings, a male figure, and he's seated. It's a passive thing. So this isn't an executive going around. That's the magician, the executive. This isn't one of those. This is somebody who's sitting down saying, you do that for me, you do that for me. And these people he's pointing to, they're kings. So the emperor, the position of real power, is above the worldly executive power, is higher principle than that. And so in my world, I moved out of the worldly and entered a kind of cosmic reality. And I started to become familiar with the existence of soul as a characteristic. It had qualities, it had attitude, it was a person on a higher level with access to act through me and other soul siblings. So I became aware of that facility of the soul having command over various beings in different space-time coordinates. So instead of being subject to my soul, I became aware of the capacity I have to relate as soul and to be familiar with having a family of soul siblings. And the authority I claim as emperor then moves me out of the reach of worldly autocrats like politicians and businessmen. I claimed sovereignty in the spiritual realm, which put me out of the reach of those who obey money and position. Now, in doing that, I moved into the energy of the Hierophant. Now, this is where the authority that you have is vested in your spiritual station. And I became a spiritual teacher. And I had groups, workshops and things like that. And I explained spiritual principles that I'd been learning to other people. And that's all I wanted to do, in a sense, just to explain it to someone else so that I could understand it myself. I didn't really need a position of authority, particularly, but that's what goes with the job. When you explain things to people, they raise you to a higher level of authority, and the extreme version of that is the Pope. And you can see by what's happened to the Catholic Church how profoundly corrupting spiritual power is. So when you actually move into this path of truth, and you move from worldly power of a high order to spiritual power of a high order, the temptation to get lost in ego is huge. So this is its purpose, is to tempt you with egotism, just to see if you notice that you're being tempted and you have an answer to that seduction. And of course the answer is meditation. There's no ego in meditation. If you're doing meditation in an egotistical way, then you're not meditating. Meditation is the release of ego and the focus on life itself. You just focus on breathing, and that's all you focus on. And as soon as your mind has any interest in anything at all, then you just return to the breath. And so that's what gives you the spiritual authority that you claim in order to be able to explain the mysteries to people. And this brings a lot of power with it. This is more power than the emperor, because it's spiritual power. But those people that are your students, they prioritize spirituality over money and stuff. And so they prioritize your position as a teacher over any other people. So you're given that level of devotional authority. It's not reluctant because you pay people, they'll do as you tell them, like the emperor. This is, I know stuff that you'd like to know. So like, just listen, give me your attention. And the only reason you're able to do that legitimately is because of this ability you're developing to lose the ego in the state of meditation. However, the truth is, and that's what we're studying on the path of truth, of course, that neither the worldly power of the emperor nor the spiritual power of the Pope actually have the power. That's the truth. The truth is that the card of the lovers give us an explanation for where the true power lies. Glamorization of love is what makes the world go round. They say love makes the world go round. Well, it's the glamorization of love that makes the world go round. They say that money is the root of all evil. Well, it's the attachment, the love of money that's the root of all evil. So wisdom teachings like that are very often corrupted and they give you the wrong answer. Love makes the world go round. Not really true. Cupid does. Now, Cupid is not pink and fluffy and lovely, although we all think it is. As soon as we fall in love, it's like falling into a volcano. It is falling into something fiery and out of your control, and where you lose rationality, and you probably lose a lot of your money, and you lose your sense of innocence, you lose stuff. And you do that because of the amazing feeling of being in love with someone. Well, that's not love, that's hormonal imperatives wanting babies. Cupid's job is to create babies. It's a survival instinct of the species, and it does that by making people fall in love and behave in a very, very silly way until there are babies born. And then they take life seriously enough to decide whether or not they've fallen in love with the right people. And roughly speaking, 50% of the population nowadays have decided that that wasn't true. They separate even more than 50% because it's just dealt with in a very silly way. Now, I'm sorry if that sounds cynical, but that is my observation. It's not only my personal life experience, it's my observation of what's going on. We don't take the most powerful energy on the planet seriously enough. And this survival instinct, this inclination to breed, is called love. And it creates the permission to do stupid things. That's the truth. And we need to come to terms with that. Now, coming to terms with that kind of means that unless you're free of that energy, then you're not free, because it controls everything. That's the power of life, that hormones make us do things that we wouldn't do with a clear mind. And that's the essential teaching here. It's not really to do with sex. It's certainly not to do with love. It's to do with the fact that the mind and the heart are not always in alignment. Certainly the mind and the solar plexus, certainly the mind and the genitalia, they're not in good communication together, typically. Now, if you do your meditations correctly and profoundly and all the time, then you can link all of the chakras together. And that's what the Kundalini exercises are. They bring this channel that links heaven and earth, and the lower chakras then receive light. There's nothing wrong with the lower chakras, it's just that they're not light. They're distorted because they don't receive the light. But if we actually did the appropriate meditations, and it's just a visualization of light, this light I spoke of earlier, the Shekinah, comes down through the crown, and if you bring that into the earth, then it goes through the lower chakras, and the lower chakras are no longer dark enemies of your well-being. And so the base chakra is not afraid anymore, and the survival instinct doesn't make it do stupid things. It knows that it's safe and it won't be in danger. And the sex chakra is a pleasure center that brings the act of relationship into the deepest realms of physical reality. And if it's left unwarped, if it's given light, it's a delight. It's a real lovely thing then to have sexual involvement with somebody that you love. It's distorted into pornography and Friday night sex, but that's because you haven't given it light. The solar plexus, this sense we have of reactivity of ego. How dare you accuse me of that? Oh, I'm that kind of energy. That's where light has not got to the solar plexus. So what we need to do in order to realize the Lover's card is to bring light to the lower chakras and not be tempted by Cupid to do stupid things. So there's the truth of it. It's not the governments and the police force that have the power of the emperor behind them that really matters, nor is it the Pope, the Hierophant, the spiritual teacher, the workshop leader, that they can charismatically get you to believe in more or less anything if you read the scriptures. Such nonsense, such absolute lying nonsense is written and believed by millions of people by this energy of the Hierophant. No, it's the lovers that control you. In other words, your sexual attraction to people and your inability to bring clear-mindedness to all of the lower chakra things, not just the sex chakra. So that's the Lover's card. And when we've got that sorted out, we're no longer naive. We understand the way of the world and the way of the worlds beyond this world. We get it, So that moves us on to the next path. Now, the path of joy, it's just self-evident that you live life to become an expression of constant joy. It seems clear. And the Chariot is the first card within this series, and the Chariot is to do with finding the right path. When we've kind of worked out how life is, all of its dangers, all of its mysteries, all of that, we've kind of got a sense of what's going on here, how sharp we need to be, how compassionate we need to be, how mysterious things are, and all of these kind of things, and how power works. We've got a sense of what's going on. So we have to choose our path through this. I mean, it's a jungle, isn't it? And that's what the Chariot is for. And the Chariot is indicating that wild horses are pulling us in different directions. Our sensuality, our hormonal imperatives, our silliness of mind, our neediness of heart, all of these wild horses are pulling us in the wrong direction. So the charioteer, you, me, we have to control our wild horses. And that's how we subdue the senses. They need to run, they need to be passionate. The power of the animal within us, the passion, we need it to draw our chariot forward, but we need it to be tamed. So we have to tame our wild horses to get onto the right path of life. And then we have to choose a path. And this path of joy is associated with choosing a path. And then the card of justice is course correction. Justice isn't appropriately handed out by courts of law to those of us that are awakening. They don't deal with justice, they deal with power. The power to keep property in the hands of the rich. That's the justice system. Justice is to do with keeping a clean conscience, a clear conscience, doing the right thing. No one else can tell you what that is. You know that because your own body tells you what that is. That's the justice principle. And this is how we evolve. The Chariot is the freedom that we find when we're walking the right path. When we know we're on the right path and we're not looking anywhere else because we know we're on the right path. And the right path doesn't require you to get anywhere further. It doesn't matter whether you walk along it a long way or a short way, quickly or slowly. That doesn't matter. You're free to do whatever you want because you're on the right path. What that means is you've got your principles sorted out. You've got your knowledge sorted out. You know what you choose to believe. You know what you can do, what you can't do. You're on the right path, and it probably has spiritual teachings. Probably, because there's a spiritual aspect of you, and those are mysteries as yet to be unfolded to you fully. However well the High Priestess gave you the clues, you haven't got the embodied realization of it until you've had the experiences. So the Chariot is what will draw you into those experiences. So it's meant to be a bit adventurous, a bit dangerous, a bit fast, a bit on the edge of your control. So it's not well within your control, it's right on the edge. It's like when you're driving a car, for example, there's a level at which you can drive this fast. You can just about see everything you need to see and respond quickly enough. And it's a tremendous exaltation to be that powerful with that engine beneath you. You know, that's what it's like driving a chariot, I would imagine. But you go too fast and it's just like, you can't do it anymore. There's stress and there's danger and you're at risk of hurting other people. And so you got to go as fast as you can, but no faster, like with a car. Now, the justice principle lets it be known to you whether you've gone a little bit too fast, because there'll be a penalty, or whether you're going in the wrong direction, because there'll be a cul-de-sac sign. The justice system is your feedback process. It's whether you notice implications. Whatever you do has implications. Are you noticing them? If you're not, you can't feel joy. It's when you have dealt with all that needs to be dealt with, taken responsibility for all that you've done wrong, sorted things out, made amends, you know, when you've actually done all the necessary things fairly and squarely in alignment with the justice, that you evolve. That's what evolution is, you know, doing the right thing in challenging situations. That's the path towards joy. That's pointing you towards joy, is finding a right path and doing it properly, noticing the feedback, correcting yourself, getting on the right path. And then this leads you to the third mystery of the path of joy, which is the Hermit card. Now, the Hermit card is the internalization of that which has been external. So you've been following guidance to get where you are. That needs to be internalized at some point. You need to become your own spiritual guide. Now, I know earlier when you were the Hierophant, you were doing teaching workshops and so on, but that's not guidance. That's a different thing. That's teaching in order to learn. This is guidance. And eventually, you can't follow another individual because they don't understand you as well as you understand yourself at this level. At the beginning, that's not true. A spiritual guide will understand you better than you understand yourself. That's why they can guide you. But there comes a point where they just can't get you anymore, because in your own direction, you've gone as far as they can reach. Your guide no longer serves you because they've got their own path to walk, and yours is different. You separate your path away from other paths. You've found your own path with the Chariot. You've corrected the directions with the Justice card. Now you know what you're doing. You know how to self-correct. You don't need guidance anymore. You internalize your guidance. Now, that's not the same as being entirely selfish and spontaneous. That's like knowing how to check it out internally. So you become sensitive to body clues, to feelings of, that doesn't feel quite right. And in my simple way, I like things to be made simple as possible. I've got this lovely phrase which I learned at some point, can't remember where. Maybe means no. That's the only guidance you ever need, because the physical body will say three things to you. It will say no. It will say yes. Or it will say maybe. Maybe means no. So simple. So if you trust your own inner guidance, you just notice that part of the body that says yes, and then you do it immediately, without second guessing. The body says yes, you do it. Otherwise, you don't. There's more information necessary. Not the right time, not the right people, not the right season, whatever. Maybe, not yet. No, walk away. Yes is a very definite body feeling, and that's the inner guidance I need. And the other sort of part of how you get to be this way, you have to separate out from forces that are cluttering your mind. In other words, people. You have to be able to live alone, and take your own counsel, and literally living alone for a period is really good. And even if that period is only a matter of a few days or a few weeks on retreat, I mean proper retreat, not just a workshop where you're having fun, but a retreat where you're away from everything. You don't think, you don't talk, you don't eat very much, you just do spiritual practices, a retreat from everything in the world. You retreat into that place of being within yourself that speaks with a very quiet voice indeed. The soul's voice is very quiet, and this is where you contact your inner guidance. It's so joyful. The interaction you get with other people, which we call joy, we have it in relationships with people, we have group activities, and we play with other people, and it fills us with what we call joy. It's not really comparable to this. That's pleasure, really. And it's good for a purpose, but it's nothing like this. The joy of knowing that alone you have everything that you need. It's so liberating, so evolving, and it's actually so creative. This is where you connect with the muse. You can then be in alignment. You can be in so intimate, close relationship with the muse, your source of inspiration, your higher self. You start to awaken familiarity with the soul on such a level that it's no longer a concept, an attainment that you're aspiring to. It's just, you're there. It's just like when you've learned a musical instrument. You think, you practice, you discipline yourself for years and years and years, and then at some point it plays you. And your fingers don't think about what they're doing anymore. The music comes through the instrument and it makes your fingers move. That's what it's like when you get the hermit energy sorted out. You live alone, and that's your preference. And you consult your own inner guidance, and that's the highest wisdom that there is. And your music plays you. The music of life, the beingness of this moment just enacts through you. And you carry your own light into the darkness. You bring light where previously there was darkness. You find your way into the mysteries then. And that's so joyful. There's nothing comparable. It's the path of joy. Now we study the path of power, and it really isn't the power of the emperor and the pope that we're discussing anymore. It's real power. The power that pertains to position and wealth and so on, that's not power. That's given to you by a higher authority. You're not your own person. But here, following on from being happy as the hermit to be alone, the power that we're actually now looking for is soft power. And that's best accessed and realized and understood in the absence of hard power. So this is a secret made available to you when you have nothing, when you have no title, and you have no position, and you have no money, and you have no home. You have got nothing. So the dervish, the student, Sufi, was given the task of wandering as a mendicant, begging, having no home. And it's kind of not very easy to do that anymore, if it ever was, but nobody really does that nowadays. But there are ways of doing something similar, where you just live on the road and you do whatever you can to make your money, and you don't have position and you don't have wealth. You can live free of that. And in so doing, you develop this soft power. And we begin the study of this in the card of the Wheel of Fortune. So whether you're king or a beggar, there are seasons, there are rhythms, and there are times which are good and times which are not. And that's how it is. The Wheel of Fortune just goes around and around and around, and you have good times and bad times. Some happier and some are less happy. But when you're actually mastering this whole quality of soft power, it doesn't make a lot of difference to how you feel. A little bit happier, a little bit less happy. But basically there's this deep sense of being alive, which you've realized alone in the hermit's wisdom. So you know about being, that you don't have to do, that you can just be. And that sense of being alive is a joyful sense. And so the Wheel of Fortune can come and go, and you can go up and down and round and about. It actually doesn't make any difference whether you're in relationship or not, whether you've got a job or you haven't, whether you've got money or not. It just doesn't make any difference to how you feel about life, because you're a happy person. Whatever comes your way, you're happy with it. That's power. Nobody can do anything to you then to diminish your sense of well-being. You're out of the reach of everyone else's power, and you have your own inner sense of agency and sovereignty. I am my own person. I can do whatever I feel like doing, and whatever happens, whether I get my way or I'm refused or blocked, it doesn't matter. It's all a game I'm playing. It's just for me to experience. That's the Wheel of Fortune, the approach to the Wheel of Fortune. Now the Fortitude card, often called Strength, is an indicator that you're going to come across blockages. You're going to come across power possessors with purposes different from yours, which you would really categorize as bad if you had a good-bad polarity within you, or evil if you had an evil sort of sense of the bad guys, whatever you want to call them and think of them as, those people who are the bad guys, those in your way, those who are trying to stop you being free and powerful yourself. Because we're on the path of power. We're going to face challenges to our own power. Even soft power is offensive to people who are into power. They don't like powerful people, and if they can't control you, then you're out of their control, and they don't like being out of control. So even when you've got soft power, you're going to meet some quality of enmity. And even if it's not on this worldly realm, it'll be on the spiritual realm. However, on the worldly realm, you need to come to terms with the fact that people are going to try and squash you down. And in the image of the card, you have this gentle woman closing the jaws of the lion. So, in a very gentle way, we just deny power possessors their power. Not feeding them by coming up against them, sticking out your chest and clenching your fist and threatening them with lawyers and, that's their power, not yours. Your power is to notice you're being attacked and be indifferent to that, because the Wheel of Fortune has taught you to be indifferent to anything. So if somebody's having a go at you, just get out of their way. I was very, very vigorously attacked verbally once. In such an extreme form, it's hard to imagine. This guy's rage shook a wooden building. And he didn't agree with me on a very important principle to him. And he was a big man and bullying. And he was shouting at me with a rage that he hadn't dealt with since his mother told him he couldn't have any more blancmange. And I just became translucent. That's a visualization that I can do. And I adopted the energy of Neptune. So I just disappeared and became not there, ethereal. He just gave me all of his power. He deposited all of this energy into me. And I just enjoyed it. It was a source of energy. I was being empowered by a very powerful man. He was giving me all of his power. It was a very great embarrassment to him afterwards, that he'd lost his rag. And I just had no fear, no ego. And he had nothing to do but to walk away. Now, if you can actually learn that level of fortitude, it depends upon faith. You have to have the faith that that practice works, or fear creeps in. You have to have the sense of self as not measured by how powerful you are in fights. You have to disregard that. Win or lose doesn't matter. You just don't want to fight. You have to get to that spiritual level where this is not a draw for you. And it must be a possibility, or you wouldn't be facing the event. I was challenged in that moment to put aside my habit pattern of taking such people on with full-on rage of my own. My dad taught me all I needed to learn about rage when I was a boy. I can do rage if I need to. So I had to make a choice not to match him. And that was my examination. So that's the fortitude card. This is the path of power we're studying. And say, you have to be powerful, not meek. They don't inherit the earth. And then we come to the hanged man. This is a very evocative image of Odin, in very ancient times, of Christ and Judas, all hanged men. And the reversal of consciousness occurs. You turn things upside down. You put things on their head in order to perceive life totally differently. Again, very handy to go on retreat to do this, where all of your criteria in terms of reference are taken away from you. And you see things totally, totally differently. When you have escaped the burden of society's version of power, and you've made it soft, and you've taken yourself away from competitive, challenging power games, you move into this sense of having a different game going on. Your game is not fame and fortune like everyone else's, or even security. It's a greater game. You want to understand all and everything from the other point of view. What would it be like to be on the other end of me? How do people receive me? That's one part of it, reflexive self-consciousness. How does God experience us? How would God experience me? Then you start getting to a higher level of consciousness. And you get to that point where, how do I experience myself from the higher dimension of self-awareness? That's what you're learning with these exercises. And then the question of, who am I? And what do I mean? What is my meaning? What did I mean by incarnating? What did I mean by withdrawing from the world of fame and fortune to study soft power? What did I mean by that? And this is the meaning of power. How am I able to enact the meaning of who I am? That's the power that we need. Now we come to the path of magic. And magic is the process of finessing situations to bring about changes which balance spiritual realities with material realities. Magic is very definitely about bringing down spiritual energies into form, physical form, making things happen. And to do that with such finesse that you don't actually have to do very much work. And you can bring things about with the clarity and power and passion within your mind. So the path of magic begins with death. And death is a process of transformation. It is likened to the chrysalis, moving a caterpillar to become a butterfly. It is that which we go through after the last breath in this physical world, to the first realization of our eternal being that follows, and reintegration with the soul. It's that process of radical movement at the roots, radical at the root. That level of transformation, we go through changes all of the time. There isn't anything else going on, but sometimes there's a radical change. And we've met this now. And when we move from all of the learnings that we did in the first part of the tarot exercise, including understanding what power really is, and we come now to the point where we're magicians, real magicians, not deceitful, artistic, trickery kind of ridden magicians like in the magician card, but now we're actually practicing magic at a very much higher level, the level of death. We master death. They say that you cannot escape death and taxes. It's not true. If you're a real master, then you can. And to escape death, you welcome it, you want it, you yearn for it, you know that after this life, as they call it, in this palace of the earth, this corrupt place of untruth, this world of lies, when we move from this to the next realm of beauty and truth and glory and freedom, we go through death. Death is the gate into the paradise that follows. When we know that, and we remember that every day, in every situation, then we have freed ourselves from the fear of death. We yearn to bring it into life. And that yearning to bring death forward gives us such a greater sense of life. This is something to really enjoy fully, knowing full well that soon something better is going to happen. That's the mystery of death. And we die to each day. We die to each moment. I was speaking a moment ago about something else. I've forgotten that. I don't know what that was. I can't remember it. Now I'm speaking about this. That moment's gone. It's died. And that was the same for yesterday. And that friendship which is no longer active, and that relationship, and that wife, and that problem, they're gone. That's death. When you let go of the burden of the past, in a certain knowledge that the future is better. This affirmation of optimism, this acknowledgement that the future is always better than the past, is what you have done with your soft power. You've transmuted your soft power into faith. And magic begins with faith. If you have no faith, you can't practice magic. It won't work. And people don't understand this. Now, the next card is Temperance, and we're discussing magic now, the path of magic. We die to everything inconsequential, and then we practice temperance. Temperance is the balance that we need to find between the material and the spiritual. For example, every other balance is implied within that, in fact. And one of the seductions of this path of realization is that we get lost in spirituality. It's just great that we can feel all these wonderful feelings of power and joy and the life force, wisdom. It's wonderful. And then we kind of get seduced by the idea that goodness is good and badness is bad. That's just not true. And we mustn't get lost in the idea that spirituality is better than materiality and the good guys are better than the bad guys. It's just not true. It's wrong. It's a misunderstanding. And temperance is that state of being where you can actually see that without the bad guys, the good guys couldn't exist. You can't have good without bad. Without the darkness, the light has nowhere to shine. You can't have light without dark. You get that this balance of a situation requires that a good and a bad, a black and a white, a spiritual and a material are seen to exist. The illusion is that they exist, but temperance card kind of makes it obvious that there's no preference here about which is better. And that means that you've got to do things that perhaps you did as a teenager and you gave up because you became spiritual. So maybe you have to pick up a glass of wine again and so on, and just understand how the other half lives. Because if you don't, then you get lost in your light ivory tower. You get holier than thou and pompous, and that's a great danger for the ego, of course, but it also spoils your game. You just lose sight of things. And that'll take you into the domain of the devil. The devil. The great tempter. Well, that's his job, And without that energy, you couldn't examine and perfect your spiritual commitment. Now, even though we've experienced the temperance as having a sense of balance between the dark and the light being okay, and no judgment against either side, you still got a right to prefer. And if your preference is to walk the path of light and not get lost too deeply in the energy of the devil, to lose your sense of self, if that's your choice, then you need the devil to tempt you in order that you can turn your back on it and affirm your choice and know that you've got the power to do that and the clarity of choice to do that. So you want the devil so that you can turn your back on it. But there's another choice, because if you can actually walk the path of the devil without letting go of light in your head, then you can take your light more deeply into the darkness where it's most effective. It'll have more effect there. To say it's most needed is irrelevant. People make their own choices. If they needed light, they'd be looking for light. But for you to know that your light is not only bright, but also has quality. This is a metaphor for light. Each of our energetic kind of radiances have qualities. And if you walk in the path of the devil, you'll notice what they are, as long as you don't get lost. But then it's really wonderful to notice yourself swimming with the sharks and keeping this consciousness of noticing what you're doing as you do that. Quite invigorating. Big challenge. And you decide whether to stay there or to come out. And if you stay there, you're probably lost. You have to decide to come out at some point. And magic is right on the edge. Most people who practice magic are practicing it selfishly. They try to get more money or more sex or whatever. If you learn the devil's greatest work, which is magic, and you turn it into God's greatest work, magic, you're working on the highest level, the deepest level, whichever you want to call it. That's where change occurs. Change occurs where light and darkness are at odds with each other. So you go to the darkest reaches of your imagination and you say, I see you, and you're not impressive. You're certainly not overpowering me. My faith is stronger than your temptation. Yeah. And that's magic. And you can ritualize that. You can anchor the power of your faith in incense and candles and mantra and sigils, and you can do all of that, and I recommend that you do. I do fully. I've got magical symbols everywhere I look. I know in every moment that I open my eyes that I'm aligned with forces of goodness, because that's what all of these tools of the trade of magic do for you. They just anchor you into the place of power. And I've got prayer beads that do the same thing, and I say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim every day, and in fact, I've got all manner of ways for me to remind myself that I'm a man of faith, so then I can walk with the devil. And I have compassion for the devil. I have compassion for anyone who's not found the joy of life. Why not the devil? Now, one of the agencies of course correction, and we studied this before in the Justice card, but we come again to a more major level of course correction, the Tower. We're on the path of awareness now, so this is very, very high level spiritual consciousness, awareness. We're right on the edge of self-realization. And the Tower is the crashing down of everything that you believe, everything that you have, all of your relationships and your possessions, and your self-glorification, because you can face the devil down and still not get lost. This is the thing about the devil, that when you beat the devil, you feel pride. And that's the devil, The Tower is just bring you down to your knees. In my particular case, I was living on the road for 30 years, homeless. And I started to feel something which was blocking me. Pride of a sort, maybe, or complacency or something. And my world came crashing down. Everything. I lost my marriage, my home, my income, my community. My health was in trouble, and I was on the street. Very briefly, I kind of realized, oh God, this is as low as I can survive. I couldn't go further down. I met people living on the street. I couldn't do that. That was not for me. I can't go that far. These people are amazing, the ones that actually live on the street. They cope with things I couldn't cope with. But I was taken to that level. I'd lost everything. And that's the Tower energy. And it brings awareness of a certain danger of hubris. The path of realization is one where we keep on affirming goodness, and we want ourselves to be good and in truth and in joy. And actually, that develops a sense of self-love a little bit beyond a healthy level. And the Tower is just like a slap in the face, and there's nothing special about you, James, Don't get too cocky, mate. That's the Tower energy. And that level of awareness is wanted. So however good we become, however impeccable our life is being led, you don't want to go there. You're an ordinary person, doing okay, I suppose, not as good as you could, better than you did. That's it. More than that, you're in danger of hubris. That's the relationship you have with God, which is less than awesomely respectful. Anything less than thinking of God as absolutely, totally amazing is hubris. You can't think of yourself as anything that special. Self-importance is where we get lost in ego. And it's a very, very tricky game, because without a huge amount of self-love, and therefore a little bit of self-importance, you can't get the job done. It's just a requirement for the job. You need to be a little bit ego-driven to drive. And yet you come to a point where even that needs to be let go. You need to kind of somehow surrender the ego at some point. And the tower will give you a kick up the ass if you don't do it voluntarily. Now, this leads us to the highest levels of consciousness, where we start with the star. Light. Light. Look at all the stars. Look at all the stars in the sky. Billions upon billions upon billions of galaxies, each one of which has got billions of stars in it. And each star is a sun. Light upon light upon light. Our sense of what is glorious light, we haven't any way of going beyond the sun, because that's all we can imagine, it's all we can see. But there's uncounted numbers. It's like an infinite number almost of sources of light in the sky. Our sense of light is so trivial, so minuscule compared to what is God. And the star, if you reach a very, very high level of spiritual attainment, you get to see light, that this is not form. When we saw the Matrix movies, and when we talk about sort of subatomic physics, and some clever philosophers on Facebook, they talk about the idea that this is, what do they call it, a hologram or something. We're inside our own matrix. It's all subject to somebody else's consciousness. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, of course it's all light. It's all energy. It's all that's how it all is. It's no big deal that that's the case. There's nothing substantial about us at all. We're just made of light. And that which holds the light into the form that looks to be the body that I operate through, that is a mind set, a set of the universal mind. God's the universal mind, and it just sets James into place. Yeah, there it is. And it's just a spark of beingness, of ever so much less significance than any particular star amongst the billions of billions of billions that there are. That's my life. It is absolutely at the end of all significance. And yet it is simultaneously central to all significance from the other point of view. So paradoxically, at one and the same time that you are nothing, absolutely nothing in the context of self-importance. And yet the center of it all, the star, the sun shining on your life, the star of your life, the superstar of your life. You're the protagonist in your own movie. You're the hero of your own movie. In that case, you're the star of it. That word star in entertainment industry is quite well chosen. So that's the star. And then we get to the moon, and we see that if we're the superstar of our own movie, then this is our own movie. And this is just everything that we experience. Everything that we experience is nothing more than a reflection of self. We're at the card of the moon now. And we're just reflected back by our lives. And equally, we are the reflection back to God of its idea. This facet might be an interesting exploration. And that's it. We're just there. It's nothing else. We're simply having an experience of self through self, mirrored on the electromagnetic field that we call life. But it's not real. It doesn't exist. It's not important for anyone else but us. And we just make of it what we make of it. And when we get to that level of moon consciousness, we have this soft light. Then we're not yet radiant. We're just reflective. We're reflecting on that issue that we're just left to our own devices, making it all up ourselves. And so the awareness that dawns upon us is that life is a mirror, and we are reflectors within that. And that's all there is to it. So this brings us to the path of soul. The path of soul is the sun and judgment and the world. Well, the sun is that sense we have of moving from being the reflecting force within life to being the radiant force within life. The soul is a radiant force of love. It is pure. It's not looking to see who I am by reflecting itself in light. It's knowing that it is a facet of God. I am God. I am God, looking away from the source into worldliness. That's the soul's position. And the soul's position is looking away from worldliness towards God. And that's the two kind of directions of being, the in-breath and the out-breath, if you like, birth and death, if you like. And the sun's job is to create and to bring freedom of self-expression by creating an evolving sense of God. The sun is just being what it is. It doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't have to reflect on anything. It doesn't have any yesterdays or tomorrows. It just is. And so we have come to this glorious sense of self. The secret of the soul, the path of the soul is beingness. Be here now. Beingness is the greatest of mysteries. And we understand that there is nothing else. There is no measurement. There is no right and wrong other than what you think of as right and wrong. There is no heaven and hell except what you create. When you die, you just decide what to do next. And some people have been persuaded to go to hell because they've taken that spiritual teaching and they think of themselves as bad people because they've invested so much of their energy in guilt. And we come to this card and we understand that the soul knows no guilt. The soul is blameless, therefore. There's no guilt, no blame, no embarrassment. It just is. No judgments about that. No judgments about right and wrong, left or right, good or bad, up or down. No judgments of any kind. It's just, I am. I am that. That's the judgment. It's just measurement of what is. And the measurement is a heart-centered experience. It's deeper than that. It's a full-on kind of everything about me level of experience. But the center of all of that is the heart. The heart is the center of self. And the judgment card takes us into that. That's the path of the soul, is to know that being here and now and noticing what that is. That's the judgment of it. It's just noticing. And having no judgment about that, but no game going on. The evolution of self, therefore, is just deepening and deepening and deepening of awareness. And that's the soul's purpose. Here on earth and wherever it is, whenever it is, that's the soul's purpose, is to deepen self-awareness in order to deepen awareness and practice soul consciousness. And the soul is an aspect of God. So it is God, therefore. Practicing being God conscious. And God's fundamental role is allowing, noticing, compassionately noticing. Therefore, surely a yin principle, contrary to most people's teachings. Finally, we move to the world, and that's the card that we're studying today. This is the final wisdom of the tarot, the world. And, we have this sense of liberation, evolution, and creativity that carries us through the whole of life, the whole of this mystery of the tarot. Everything is expression, creative expression of evolution and freedom. We're just growing because we're alive and we're doing whatever we creatively choose to do. Now, you'll find your own way. In my case, it's dance. And I don't think there is anything better than to use that as a metaphor for life. We're just dancing. We're listening to the music, metaphorically. We're just noticing how we feel. We've learned to feel what's going on. Judgment card. And we just respond to it. And our response to what we feel right now in the moment, that's the dance of life. And you can actually dance to music if you want, and I don't see any reason why you should not, as often, as much as possible, to as much music as you can. I would say that's the best thing to do with your life, and that's what I've tried to do with mine. But if that's something different for you, it's just responding to children, or to the garden, or to whatever, make that a dance, and you've got it. You've got the mystery of the world that you live in.